Is that a guarantee then?
I don't think anybody has a guarantee on the roles. With the best guarantee that people are going to get is to make sure that Qantas is a secure, stable airline.
Fears tonight an Ansett collapse could spell disaster for the central Queensland economy. Business leaders say industry and government needs to come up with a solution immediately, while the federal government's copped a lashing over its so-called inactivity
well, we like
over the
to
crisis.
keep reinventing ourselves, and so today we've rebranded the whole Virgin airline businesses down here, Virgin Australia, and we're introducing business class across the airlines. And that will enable us to, by attracting a good chunk of Qantas's business onto Virgin, to be able to keep our fares low for our economy class passengers. So I think it's an exciting.
The commercial aviation industry in Australia. What we see today is something that we weren't expecting to see. It's past events like the collapse of Ansett and the merger of Qantas and Trans-Australian Airlines that shaped our current commercial aviation industry. Although we have to look into the future to understand what's happening at the moment in our commercial aviation industry, we have to take a look in the past and find out how the past events shaped what we see today. That first major event from the past that we think of is the collapse of Ansett. Now, a lot of you who are going to be watching this aren't really going to know what Ansett was or how significant they were to our country. Basically, before they collapsed in 2001, they were Australia's national carrier. They were the Qantas before 2001. That's when Qantas took over, and that's how we know Qantas now as a national carrier. But before that, Ansett was the top airline. That's the airline everyone flew with, although still some people flew with Qantas as well at the time, but they were the most popular airline in the country and the most popular airline to travel with outside of Australia. Back in 1935, the airline Ansett Airways was founded by Sir Reginald Miles Ansett. But however, it wasn't until the 1990s where Ansett hit its peak, where it was the most popular airline in the country. It was a booming airline with lots of nice new shiny aircraft. Air New Zealand was a previous 50% shareholder in the airline, and of course Ansett not being Qantas, they weren't restricted to the Qantas Sale Act, where no more than 49% of the entire company could be owned by an overseas airline or company. But then, in February 2000, Air New Zealand acquired full ownership of Ansett. But as Ansett were losing money, the New Zealand government bailed out Air New Zealand with $1 million. But unfortunately, they wouldn't fund or help out Ansett in any way. So that led to the collapse. They simply didn't have any money to operate. All the aircraft just stopped. They were grounded. They didn't go anywhere at all, leaving thousands of passengers stranded. But it was this event, this closure of Ansett, that led to the low-cost era that we seen shortly after. In late 2001, when we seen Virgin Blue, or now as we know it, Virgin Australia, and also Impulse Airlines, which was a low-cost carrier which was eventually bought out by Qantas.
And that spelt the end of Ansett.
Our aeronautics, our engineering, have outstripped the bird, yet the marvel of flight still touches us. Touches even pilots of ours who have flown more than 20,000 hours. We want to share this marvel with you on your first flight or your 50th. We know about flight.
So really, it was the collapse of Ansett that brought the low-cost market to Australia. Richard Branson has seen an opportunity to bring his own low-cost brand into our country, the fact that Ansett collapsed. If they would have come here originally, they probably wouldn't have had as much survival chance against Ansett as at the time Ansett were sort of a low-cost airline themselves, but still offering a premium service. And that's sort of the approach that Virgin go for today, offering, like on the B-roll video at the start, as Richard Branson was saying, offering a premium business class product and keeping fares low for their economy class passengers. So it's a formula that's working really well, and the Virgin Group, although they're reporting some losses, but not major losses, they're still holding on nicely. And of course, with their own expansion of an international fleet over to the US and several other countries, they are still progressing their market really well. And still, Virgin are the second biggest airline in the country, even though they did buy a large stake in another low-cost airline in Australia that was launched some years ago called Tiger Air. Although that share does give them a hefty sum of the low-cost market, it's still not enough compared to Jetstar.
In 2004, the Qantas Group had simply had enough of Virgin Australia, so they thought of their own low-cost initiative called Jetstar. Well, as we know, Jetstar now, they're basically an international airline. Apart from the Jetstar Australia division, there's also a division in the Pacific and in Japan. I think Jetstar's impact on the low-cost market in Australia is something that we really don't take for granted. I mean, in a lot of instances, if Jetstar weren't around, where would we be? I mean, really, not most people can afford to travel on Qantas. It's not short of cheap, really. However, it wasn't exactly the entrance of Virgin Blue into the airline market that sort of started Jetstar. It was actually originally the purchase of Impulse Airlines by Qantas, because they acquired the Impulse Airlines fleet, which eventually operated under Qantas for a short time, and then that was the backbone of the original Jetstar fleet, the Boeing 717. So really, Qantas wouldn't have had any aircraft to start up Jetstar with if it wasn't for the acquisition of Impulse back in 2002. But then we even travel back further to see how Qantas gained all of this money, as you would call it, to purchase Impulse. It was because they purchased back in the early 90s TAA, or Trans-Australian Airlines. Basically, they were in the late 80s and 70s quite a popular airline in Australia domestically. And when Qantas acquired them in the early 90s, they got all of their aircraft, and even some of those aircraft are still in service with Qantas today. And it was that stepping stone to the Qantas fleet that sort of boosted Qantas over that 10 years while Ansett gradually fell.
A $10.9 million deal over 10 years from the Tasmanian government has secured the Qantas call centre for the state. Tasmanian Premier Will Hodgman announced the details of the government's agreements with the airline in State Parliament today. The majority of the deal comes in the form of payroll tax relief. Money will also be spent on upgrading Qantas's Hobart call centre and assisting interstate employees to relocate. Last week, the Flying Kangaroo announced 450 call centre jobs from Queensland and Victoria will be moved to Hobart. The decision has angered the Victorian government, with Cabinet Minister Matthew Guy claiming the airline is playing favourites with Tasmania.
Well, I guess it's fair to say that in many ways, apart from actual flying, Qantas do have quite an effect on the Tasmanian economy. The fact that they're bringing more jobs into our state, although recently they have cut aircraft services at Hobart Airport, making Hobart Airport the only airport, or capital city airport, in the country that doesn't offer the full Qantas domestic service. Well, we can't rewrite the past, so we need to focus on the future events of our aviation industry in Australia, because it's one of the most important industries, along with our automotive industry, that are falling to the ground rapidly. Us as a country, we can definitely do something about it and make it so we have a good, strong aviation industry to come in the future, not only for ourselves, but when we get older and have kids, they'll have a strong, reliable aviation industry they can rely on. And hopefully we can put this Qantas budget cut thing behind us. And the fact that we have to look into the past and see how past events had shaped the events of what we're seeing in today's time realises that we probably could have done it a bit better. But anyway, like I said, we can't rewrite the past, but we can write what happens in the future. So I guess I tried to deliver as many facts as I could in this video, but really I've realised that I've probably delivered a message. The fact that we can look at the past, see where we made our mistakes, and shape the future, so it's generally a much better and safer aviation industry. Thank you for watching, and I hope I was able to tell you a few things about our aviation industry that you may not have already knew. And please make sure, if you're on YouTube, to give this a thumbs up. It would be much appreciated, or leave any feedback or any facts that I may have missed, or simply to share a story you might have about the aviation industry.